Alright, it's hot, I'm in quarantine, and I haven't had a haircut in maybe like a month. But today we get to talk about an interesting character. He's a doctor, he's also a detective, and his face is literally always on fire. Today on Comicology. So I love to explore Golden Age heroes, but you see, the thing that's funny about Golden Age heroes is that they have a huge impact in history, but if you look at it, none of these heroes actually have a whole lot of content. Take the Fiery Mask, for example. This guy has a total of like 4 stories, but his impact on the greater Marvel universe cannot be understated. Like, have you ever even heard of the Fiery Mask? Like, well, I mean, if you're watching this, then you're probably on the playlist. Then you're probably interested in the more obscure characters. Allow me to explain. First of all, his name is Jack Castle, which is a pretty cool name. And he has the powers of super strength, super speed, increased stamina, and some control over elements, mostly fire, but also some electricity. He is actually a remarkably powerful character, considering how obscure he is. But how did he come by these superpowers? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because it's actually an interesting story, and that brings us into our first issue for this episode, Daring Mystery Comics #1, with the first appearance of the Fiery Mask. Before he got his superpowers, Jack Castle was a doctor and an informant for the police who would offer his services whenever he could to combat crime. Often he would investigate problems for them, leading to some intricate solutions, including his most important case, in which a series of vagrants went missing without a trace, and he was tasked with figuring out where they had gone. He made his way to the docks, where he discovered hypnotic zombie corpses kidnapping hobos and taking them down into some sort of lair. It's inside this lair where we meet the marvelous Master Zombie, who uses his tremendous scientific knowledge to bring people under his hypnotic control. The Master Zombie straps Jack into his special hypno ray, which has the power to zombify humans, but Jack's will is too strong and it doesn't work. In a fit of rage, the zombie turns the ray into maximum power and causes an explosive reaction which destroys the lab. This explosion also happens to give Jack his tremendous superpowers, which he uses to defeat the Zombie Master and escape. Now he is known as the Fiery Mask, and he uses these abilities to protect the innocent and punish crime. So you still following me? Yeah, he got his superpowers from a Master Zombie Hypno Ray. So if you think that sounds stupid, don't worry. That is absolutely stupid. In fact, future creatives to work on this character would go back and retcon that origin. More on that later. But for now, let's talk a bit about his crime-fighting career. So now, Jack Castle has his powers, and he is ready to use them for the greater good, and this is great timing because the world is about to writhe at the mercy of the Jelly of Doom. Yeah, seriously, it's jelly, but it eats people, and sort of dissolves them down to their bones. A mad scientist unleashes the evil jelly on the city, and it is immediately overwhelmed. All of its citizens except for the Fiery Mask, of course, who immediately leaps into battle. He has no trouble smashing the mad scientist's evil henchmen and discovers that the jelly is invincible, except that it appears to react to the intense heat of his body. So, I know what you're thinking, and the answer is actually no. This story is not ripping off The Blob. The movie, The Blob, first came out in the year 1958. This comic was originally published in June of 1940. That's 18 years before The Blob was released. So, no, it's not ripping it off. Actually, I really don't know what the hell happened there. I doubt The Blob is ripping off Marvel Comics. Or is it? Using his special heated force field, The fiery mask penetrates the devious jelly and smashes the mad scientist in his own lair. Using all of his might, the fiery mask destroys the lair, effectively halting the jelly in its path, and the vile mad scientist who was so confident in his power ends up consumed by his own creation. So, here's the thing. Nobody is arguing that the fiery mask is not an effective hero. He's very effective, clearly, obviously effective. There's just something strange about him. Just something that's just slightly off normal. Take this story, for example, in which the fiery mask pits his might against a roaming pack of mutant vampires. Essentially what happens in this tale is random people are being murdered, and oddly enough, their bodies are being found drained of all their blood. The fiery mask takes on the case in order to find the murderer and decides to set a trap. He leaves some fresh blood from a donor facility out in the open to use as bait. To his surprise, it turns out the actual murderer is a pack of wild, genetically altered vampires who feed on the blood of innocents to sustain themselves. He follows the trail of the vampires, which leads out into the countryside. He then allows the vampires to capture him in order to have a meeting with their leader. The leader is actually a mad scientist who created these vampires by implanting iron stomachs into roaming vagrants. The fiery mask isn't having any of that nonsense, and so he battles his way out and leaves the secret lair nothing more than a smoldering pile of rubble behind him. Seriously, I guess they went with iron stomachs, you know? Of all the origins for vampirism, a cast iron stomach. It makes no logical sense, honestly, and the story gives absolutely no explanation for this. This is just kind of that sort of backwards logic that comic book creators had back then that they had to implement because they had to work so fast. But that was it. The vampires had iron stomachs, and so they had to drink blood to sustain themselves. So now moving on, we have the final adventure of the Fiery Mask, specifically in the Golden Age. This time, he's pitting his powers against the Legion of Doom. This story begins in the countryside where we meet two country folk who live together as husband and wife. That night, the wife is trying to sleep when suddenly a demon appears to her with a premonition. He then hands her a baby and demands that she care for it or face the consequences. After that night, some strange murders begin to occur all over the city. People become terrified and the killer seems impossible to catch. The Fiery Mask decides to get involved by visiting the old couple in the forest, and it's here that he discovers the truly terrifying baby they were given is actually a demon from another world. I'm just going to pause for a second and let you take that in, because comics are weird, but they are not often that weird. The mask chases down the demon, who flees into the city to commit another murder. He bashes the demon down into unconsciousness, and it runs in terror. He follows the demon back to the cabin, only to find that it's murdered the old couple, and is about to escape into a portal of hellfire energy. Not one to give up, the mask leaps into the portal, only to find that he's been teleported to the alternate dimension, an evil place known as Hades. He battles valiantly against the demons here, but just then a colossal demon emerges, a figure so evil and powerful that it could only be described as Satan himself. He uses his magic to zap the Fiery Mask into oblivion. He then wakes up back at the hospital wondering if it was all a dream, except for a newspaper which reports expressly that the killings have finally stopped. So that one was actually pretty cool. Of all the Golden Age heroes in existence, the last one I expected to go to hell would be the Fiery Mask, but there it is. So that last story took a serious turn into like some weird Golden Age cosmic horror. But it does bring up some interesting questions, though. Like, does the Fiery Mask and his ability to manipulate hellfire have anything to do with the demons? Are they related at all? Perhaps even their abilities might even be the same. Is it possible that the Fiery Mask, his powers are demonic in origin? It could very well be possible, but we'll never know because after this, his appearances were canceled. He never appeared again, at least not in the Golden Age. However, this is not the end of the Fiery Mask. Like many other heroes of the time, he joined the US military in the fight against tyranny during World War II. In the crossover event Avengers and Invaders, the Fiery Mask was involved in an epic battle against the German army and the Red Skull. Using the power of the Cosmic Cube, the Red Skull erased all of history and rewrote it using Nazi ideologies. He also murdered all of the heroes in the world, including the Fiery Mask. After a great battle involving heroes from the future and the past, the timeline was eventually set to normal, and the Fiery Mask returned to rip the Red Skull a new one. See, there he is, right there. So then after that whole debacle was over, the Fiery Mask would continue in World War II. He would follow the Allies all the way to Berlin. It was while he was in Berlin that he would join up with a smaller group of heroes whose aim was to invade and sort of end the war. This group of heroes were known as the 12, and their members consisted of essentially whoever happened to be in Nazi HQ at the time of this trap. That's right, this whole thing was a trap set to capture these heroes and preserve them for scientific study. The Nazis wanted to dissect them and use their powers to further the cause of the Aryan race. Of course, this backfires when the Allies actually end up winning the war and dismantling the Nazi party. This leaves the Fiery Mask and the 12 living secretly in suspended animation underneath Berlin for decades. So at this point, the Fiery Mask essentially disappears from public view. This is the reasoning why there was never any more publications featuring him. But basically, nobody really cared because he wasn't really a big-name hero, so nobody bothered looking. That is until the year 2008, when a construction team in East Berlin uncovers the old Nazi laboratory and revives the 12. They are all given new lives as government-sanctioned heroes and set up in a mansion. They are then given 1 year to get their lives together. The Fiery Mask is actually one of the most powerful members of this group, but he definitely takes a passive role in the story's events. Much like a relic of the past, he doesn't really have an identity in our modern world, and so he doesn't do much actual crime fighting. However, his origin does come into question one night as he explains it to the patrons of his favorite pub. He explains everything about the zombie vagrants and the master zombie scientist and his powerful hypnotic ray. But the patrons immediately disregard this story as a fake. Later, 2 men are found dead with burn marks on their bodies, and the police blame the Fiery Mask and his abilities, which would suit the murder weapon perfectly. They also express that his origin story is false since they searched the records and could not find anything resembling the incident he described. Finally, after one of the team ends up dead, the Fiery Mask confides in one of his teammates that the truth is he is actually a liar, and that his origin story was made up the whole time. How he really got his powers was by inheriting them from a dying man. This man could have been saved, but instead of helping the man, he chose to let him die and take the powers for himself. It's because of this that the Fiery Mask lives a life of guilt, and is always highly motivated to do good in order to make up for his sins. He gets his chance, however, when another member of the team, Dynamic Man, was revealed to be a traitor and attacked. Being the most powerful member, the Fiery Mask battled Dynamic Man, but was critically wounded and ultimately left for dead. With no other way out, he passed on his powers much as he had received them to the Phantom Reporter. The rest of the team had a funeral in his honor in which they expressed that regardless of his origins, he was a true hero. So that's it. That's the complete history of the Fiery Mask. There's definitely more to his Golden Age character than meets the eye. And I was happy to be able to do all the research and fill all that in. It was very interesting. I have to admit, after going through all that history, I'm a fan. I like the Fiery Mask. In fact, I'm a fan of a lot of these Golden Age heroes, especially the ones consisting of the 12. If you haven't, you should go check out the book called The 12. It's really good. It's sort of like Watchmen, but for Golden Age heroes. Just check it out. You'll understand. So now I want to know what you guys think. Is the Fiery Mask worth your time? What do you think of his origin and the way it was retconned? Let me know. I want to know. In the meantime, I'm going to go get started on some of these other members of the 12. I really am excited to explore all their origins and see where they come from and how they get retconned. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.